Imagine stepping out of your front door and seeing someone you don't know point a gun at your wife, and she's the county sheriff. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from today. Let's see how far this story travels. We'd barely unpacked when Karen showed up. Clipboard, clipped smile, and a binder of HOA rules thick enough to be a paperweight. Sarah, my wife, county sheriff, took the booklet politely, the badge at her hip humming with quiet authority. Karen's eyes flicked to the badge and then away. But that small glance carried a warning. She'd noticed and she'd decide what noticed meant. At first, the nuisances were almost laughable. A sticky note on our mailbox, control your child, a printed violation in the doorframe, a community post calling a kid's scooter unsafe. Then Karen introduced security. Daniels, a broad-shouldered man with a badge-looking patch and the sort of presence that makes you walk straighter. He started making rounds. People who once waved now stepped onto porches. Karen leaned into enforcement like a second job. We learned the rules had 1,000 nitpicky edges. Window shades, flower choices, trash can timing. It felt less like civic care and more like a slow squeeze. Sarah tried calm. She met Karen on the driveway, asked for respect and boundaries. Karen smiled, quoted page numbers. "We apply the rules uniformly," she said. But there was nothing uniform about anonymous USB drives showing candid clips of kids on scooters or a petition dropped into every mailbox singling out Household 12. It stopped being neighborly and started looking like a campaign. Then one night it escalated in the worst possible way. A late knock. Karen and Daniels on our porch. "We need to inspect the premises," Daniels said, his hand hovering near something that looked like a holster. Sarah shut the door. No warrant, no HOA documentation. A standoff. And then, in the next heartbeat, Daniels drew a gun. Time collapsed. He aimed at Sarah. I froze. The click of the firearm was a sound that bent the night. Sarah raised her hands, steady, calm, and said 3 words that shifted everything. "I'm the sheriff." The house held its breath. Everything moved like film. Daniels faltered at the word sheriff. For a sliver of a second, he was just a man with a gun and a mistake. Then the high, distant whine of sirens, neighbors calling it in, and real officers in uniform spilled onto our lawn. Daniels was disarmed and cuffed before he could find his story. Karen, clutching her clipboard, watched her muscle be led away. The immediate aftermath was messier than the moment itself. Neighbors gathered in knots, phones out asking questions that had been whispered for months. Who hired him? Why was he allowed to patrol? An emergency HOA meeting was called that same night, but the room wasn't the same stage. People who'd been passive suddenly had faces, names, and grievances. Sarah stood up and told the truth plainly. Daniels was an imposter with a criminal history. He had no credentials. We'd been targeted, and the evidence was out there. That evening, we began assembling the puzzle. Financial records we requested showed line items for security patrol paid to a shell account matching emails registered to Karen. Vendors that never showed up were paid. Neighborhood enhancement had become a funnel. Mr. Alvarez, a retired teacher with a meticulous filing habit, brought box tops of past minutes, receipts, and copies of faded checks. Patterns emerged, approvals with forged signatures, phantom votes, and unilateral decisions that funneled HOA cash into private pockets. We coordinated with the local PD. Sarah, by rank and by right, was careful to keep procedure clear. Chain of custody on documents, written witness statements, copies for the county attorney. The more we compiled, the more neighbors came forward. Fines for chalk art, threats over garden gnomes, and subtle pressures that turned daily life into a game of tiptoeing. People were angry and scared, but anger became action. Then came the email that changed everything. A contact from someone at the county AG's office saying our packet triggered a more extensive inquiry. Someone outside our cul-de-sac had flagged similar schemes in nearby towns. Karen's reach wasn't local theater. It looked industrial. We scheduled a community town hall. The room would be full. The next act was going to be about proof, law, and whether a neighborhood could reclaim itself. Enjoying the ride? Hit like, subscribe, and buckle up. This HOA story isn't done shocking you yet. The county agent's voice was calm. We'll need everything. What followed read like a serious procedural drama. Subpoenas, bank freezes, and a carefully staged raid that left no room for theatrics. At dawn, black vehicles rolled up the cul-de-sac, agents fanned out, and Karen's front door flew open. Evidence was collected. Ledgers, vendor contracts, forged minutes, and digital traces linking HOA payouts to a company she secretly controlled. Court filings landed like paper thunder. The criminal complaint alleged wire fraud, embezzlement, and falsification of records. For the first time in months, the HOA's power structure was on its back foot. Residents who'd hidden during Karen's reign now lined up to speak. The attorney for the AG moved with the patient ferocity of someone who knew how to build an unassailable case. In the courtroom, Sarah testified with the same calm she'd shown on our porch the night Daniels pulled the gun. She explained chain of evidence, neighbor statements, and the financial trail. Mr. Alvarez and others offered corroboration, canceled landscaping contracts, phantom security invoices, and signatures that didn't match. The defense tried to paint it as a vendetta, but the numbers don't lie. The jury deliberated just long enough to make the message clear. Guilty on charges of fraud and conspiracy. Karen's shoulders sagged as the verdict landed. Sentencing followed, restitution ordered, a ban from HOA leadership for life, and a federal case looming for the more serious financial crimes. The neighborhood exhaled. The healing was slow but visible. A new, transparent HOA board formed, audits were regular, minutes published, and term limits enforced. Potluck dinners returned, kids chalked sidewalks again, people began to trust their porches again. We kept some scars, a cautiousness about power, a sharper eye for process, but there was something else, a renewed civic muscle. Sarah declined the chairmanship at first, then accepted a seat on the oversight committee when the neighbors insisted. We didn't want to rule the HOA, we wanted to keep it honest.